Math was never our strong suit, but breaking down Ohio State football is. Sit back and join us for Buckeye Grove Instant Access, part of the Unscripted Ohio Podcast Network.
You can do it!
Brought to you by BuckeyeGrove.com. Post-game thoughts, immediate analysis, and much, much more to put the big game into perspective. Without any further delay of game, here's your host, Kevin Noon.
Kevin, goddammit.
Well, an unfamiliar spot for us, broadcasting after an Ohio State loss 29-23 to Clemson here at the Fiesta Bowl. I'm your host, Kevin Noon, here on the Buckeye Grove Instant Access podcast. Of course, joined as always with Braden Moles, Keaton Maisano. Before I even really set the scene too much, a little bit of a bitter pill to swallow. It was an interesting game.
I mean, it's kind of, looking back at kind of the last few years of Ohio State football, there have been obviously disappointing losses during the regular season that have kind of kept the Buckeyes out of postseason contention and all that. But, a loss like this, it is a really crushing loss with just the circumstances of, the stage they're at and obviously the way they lost. Everything has kind of gone right for Ohio State this season. And this was really the one game where it felt like everything that could go wrong did go wrong, especially, after Ohio State got up on that 16-0 lead.
Yeah, and this is the first time in a long time that Ohio State's kind of lost a close game. Usually in these tight ones that the final plays, the plays that decide the game go Ohio State's way. I think the last time they really lost a close game might be that Penn State game back in Happy Valley a few years back. But, yeah, it just felt like you were waiting for Ohio State to make that play to kind of take the game back into control after Clemson got all the momentum, and then it just felt like they were just one play short. If just one thing had gone differently throughout the course of this game, that Ohio State might be playing in New Orleans in 2 weeks, but they just couldn't make that one extra play that Clemson could.
And before we get too far into the end of the game, let's just kind of talk about, some of the big numbers here. Obviously Justin Fields threw for over 300 yards, but certainly was not the type of runner that we were used to seeing. J.K. Dobbins got off to a strong start, got dinged up during the game, and because of that, just wasn't the same runner that we were used to seeing. But I'm gonna start immediately with the Shawn Wade situation. Ohio State gets Clemson pretty much off the field, and then the replay booth buzzes in, wants to take another look at a play. Hits Shawn Wade with targeting. He's out for the game. Clemson gets the 15-yard penalty. 16-0 Ohio State lead, then is 16-7 at that point, and momentum is wrestled away.
Yeah, my first initial reaction to seeing the call was that, Wade was going at Lawrence. Lawrence dove down. There wasn't really anything Wade could do about it. While I still agree with that general assessment, the more that I've kind of looked at it and, kind of from what we heard from the officials after the game, I'm in the camp now of horrible rule, but good call on the field in terms of the way the rule is written. Because, Ohio State fan, Clemson fan, whoever you're a fan of, Wade did lead with the crown of his helmet. That is not, it's unfortunate that Lawrence kind of dipped down into said crown of the helmet. But I think it's, hard to dispute that Wade did lead with the crown of the helmet. So I think the penalty was, while unfortunate, I don't know if it was necessarily unjustified. But, I think obviously that was the big shift for Ohio State and, kind of Clemson taking momentum from there. So I think, that was really just that big turning point in the game. And obviously everything kind of unraveled from there through the rest of the second quarter with the injuries and other various calls and, whatever it may be.
Yeah, and I think the argument there is just the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law. And I think that rule is really set up to protect the players, and that's obviously why they put it in there. But then you see a play like that compared to a play that you saw previously in the Oklahoma-LSU game where a guy just kind of cracked back blocks on a cheap shot on somebody's head. And it's just like those are in the same category. They both are 15 yards. They both eject a player, and it just feels like that seems something insignificant for Wade to be thrown out of the game for, and that really impacted Ohio State, maybe even more so than the 15 yards that led to 7 points. It's just not having him there for the rest of that game. And like Braden said, that really was the momentum shift. That felt like that was the first break that went Clemson's way when Ohio State was kind of knocking at the door of kind of really putting this game out of reach for Clemson in the first half, not being able to really execute in the red zone kind of hurt Ohio State, and then that gave Clemson the extra life, gave them hope that they could get back into the end zone after Ohio State's defense had done a really good job against Clemson's offense really in that game.
Yeah, I mean, I'll touch upon something that Braden said there too. You're dealing with a 6'6" quarterback against a 6 foot, maybe listed 6'1", but much closer to 6 foot defensive back who comes in. He squats down, he changes the target zone, and lo and behold, I mean, at some point, I don't know how you're supposed to completely just change all of your tackling mechanics in the midst of that. If he doesn't crouch down, that's hitting him in the sternum, or maybe in the throat. But with that being said, I don't know if that's what I have the biggest issue with, but it certainly was kind of a harbinger of things to come. But, even, going a little bit before that, Ohio State really dominated early in the game and very easily shoulda, coulda, woulda been up 24-0, 28-0, and they were up 16-0. And I think everybody kind of had an uneasy feeling that was going to be something that would kind of come back to bite them in the end.
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State was so dominant through the first part of the game until they got to Clemson's 20-yard line. I mean, their reliance on field goals in the first half, obviously there were so many things that happened in the game that you can point to say, oh, this is why Clemson won, or, this is why Clemson won. But, I mean, in all reality, it ended up being a 6-point game at the end, and Ohio State kicked 3 field goals in the red zone in the first half. So I think when you look at that, I mean, there are so many things you can point to, but those are really the moments where Ohio State could have taken, we saw the blowout earlier today with LSU beating Oklahoma, but, I don't think it was ever going to get to that level. But if Ohio State had been able to turn those field goals into touchdowns, it would have been a very, very different game going into the second half, even if you still are dealing with, Wade's ejection and Dobbins' injury and everything like that.
Yeah, and Ohio State's first 3 red zone trips all ended in field goals. I mean, their lone touchdown in the first half was off Dobbins' big run for a touchdown. And just like Braden said, I mean, really it comes back to bite you when you're looking at these close games. Every point matters. So, like, when you're getting down there and you're giving away 4 points and settling for the 3 because you're giving away the 7, it's costly. And Kevin kind of alluded to it, too. It's an uneasy feeling because when you're playing the defending national champions, they're going to make their run. You're not going to be able to hold them down for an entire game, and you almost need to build that cushion when you're kind of clicking. And Ohio State was only able to get that to 16 points when there was a potential to really build it up even bigger and really kind of put Clemson out of the way and out of striking distance.
When you look at the final stats, Ohio State outgains them by almost 100 yards. Ohio State, I'm looking here, outrushes them 196 to 158. They outpass 320 to 259. We're going to look back on this one. It's going to be a bitter pill to try and swallow at this point. Just so many missed opportunities, so many things that just didn't go their way. But that's kind of been a little bit of Ohio State's calling card, that Ohio State's had to do it even better than that because they do seem to make those types of mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it really is incredible when you look at the stat sheet. I mean, so I believe they said it on ESPN's broadcast for the game. This is the first game that Ohio State has ever lost where J.K. Dobbins has rushed for over 100 yards. They're now 18-1 in such circumstances, with Dobbins going for 174 yards today. And I mean, you look at Fields at 320 yards. I believe that's a career high in passing yards, somewhere around there. And obviously 46 attempts is well above where he's been all season. So, I mean, it's really, when you look at the stat sheet, if you showed this to someone and didn't show the final score, you really would think Ohio State would have been the winner here. But it's just those mistakes, and, not just mistakes, but the other kind of misfortunate things that happened to them throughout the game, whether it be officiating or the injuries. It's just, it really just felt like it was not Ohio State's day today after they went up 16-0.
Yeah, and it really felt like every kind of bad break, every 50-50 thing went Clemson's way, and that's what happens in your team like them. You don't win 28 games in a row by, not knowing how to win these tight kind of contests, but Ohio State kind of went out the way that they've been so great all year. They were aggressive. They were throwing the ball downfield, and that resulted in 2 interceptions, maybe off some miscues, miscommunications, which we hadn't seen all year. But then with the special teams thing that would lead to a touchdown after the roughing the punter call, Ohio State's been tremendous on special teams. They've made some great plays. They made a lot of blocks, and really Chris Olave was right there to make another one. But unfortunately, he wasn't able to get his hands on it, and then Cameron Brown ran into the punter. But Ohio State went out the way that they had been able to dominate people so well, but they just weren't able to make the plays that we had seen them make through the first 13 games of the season. And they needed to make 1 or 2 more, and they would have been able to have a different result here.
And then, one more that I want to touch upon before we get to the break is the the overturned forced fumble, scoop and score that happened. That one I think is going to be the one that's really going to be sour with a lot of people, namely Gene Smith, Ohio State athletic director, who has not been very shy about his displeasure on that one. They forced the fumble. I mean, the question is, did he make a catch or not? And on the field, they ruled it was a catch, a fumble, and a touchdown. And then once again, the booth buzzed down. And I know that I went to social media and I said, if they turn this over, I'm done. I don't know what. I mean, he had 3.5 steps essentially there, and then this call of no, there wasn't a football move. Well, what the hell is a football move? I would think 3.5 steps is a football move. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm looking at it the wrong way. I don't know, but that one just really does not sit well with me.
Yeah, I mean, because when we were watching the game and kind of watching that live, we were all thinking, okay, did I believe it was Justin Ross who caught the ball, who didn't catch the ball actually. We were just looking to see if he took 3 steps, if he had possession of the ball. But post-game, we actually weren't, so that a rare occasion, we actually had some quotes from the officials after the game. Referee Ken Williamson said that they determined that when Ross moved, the ball was becoming loose in his hands. So don't really know what that means, because it was clear that Ross had possession of the ball when he was taking those 2, 3, even 4 steps. And correct me if I'm wrong, becoming loose implies that he did have it at one point, right? I mean, it was shocking to me that was overturned.
Yeah, and I don't know if it just looked weird to them because of the fact that he never really tucks the ball, but he's got that ball securely between 2 hands and is taking 3 steps, which I always believe just means that's a football move. It's either a football move or take 2 steps or something like that, some combination of that. And it really did look like he had control of it, and then Okudah was able to break it free. And it felt like that was the play that really shifted momentum back in Ohio State's favor. And then they go to review, and it kind of looks like one of those things that even if they're not able to confirm it, it's going to stand because they called it on the field as a fumble, and that's just really how it's going to go. And they had enough evidence to overturn it, which I think is what's really going to bother people. It's just the fact that they went in there and they decided to change that call because they felt they had the evidence, which I feel like a lot of people may have not thought that was there. And it's going to be a little bit sour because that felt like the defensive play that almost could have shifted the tide, especially because it was in the 3rd quarter, and Ohio State could have had the momentum going into the 4th and kind of trying to put the game back into 2 scores.
Well, we're going to take a break here in a second as we sit right under the air conditioning. So if you hear that sound, that is the air conditioning. But let's go to our friends at Hague Water Conditioning as we take a quick break here at the turn.
Hague Water Conditioning has been treating well in city water in Central Ohio with American-made water filtration products for over 60 years. Have a water quality problem? The water treatment experts at Hague know how to solve it. Not sure if your water softener is working? They will test, inspect, and sanitize any brand of water softener for only $20. Schedule a system checkup or water test today by calling 614-836-2195 or visit them online at HagueH2O.com. That's HAGUE H2O.com.
Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Kevin Noon, here on the BIA podcast, of course, joined with Braden Keaton, as I am after every game. There won't be any more football games this year, though, as Ohio State comes up on the short end of a 29-23 decision to Clemson. To Ohio State's credit, they do come back, though. Touchdown pass to Chris Olave. Late in the game, it looks like they're starting to hold on to it. Ohio State's forced a punt. They ended up getting it killed at the 6 as it bounces off of a Clemson player. The ball gets downed over there as he falls on it. 94 yards, not a lot of time on the clock, and then lo and behold, fate intervenes once again.
So Keaton was in the press box. Kevin and I were watching the final drive down to the field, and we were standing next to Urban Meyer on the field, and he was just classic Urban Meyer, kind of rubbing his head as he was watching that final drive. And it was as we watched them move down the field, it really felt like those Ohio State games of the past where you see the Buckeyes kind of take over those final moments and etch themselves in history. And then when we got down to Clemson's end zone and we see Fields throw the pass, my thought, watching the pass, I was thinking that that it's going to an Ohio State receiver. But lo and behold, Olave ends up running a different direction where Fields is throwing it, and it's picked off. And it really seemed like a gut punch to the team, because those types of moments where Ohio State should have capitalized are the types of things that they have become, that they're known for. So it was just surprising to see kind of the deflated nature of how the game ended.
Yeah, and with that final drive where Clemson was able to take the lead, it kind of felt like this was the perfect moment. And this defense has been built for this moment. I mean, last year the defense was not consistent, but this was the defense that was one of the best in the country, if not the best. And now they have Clemson with a chance to get one more stop, and then you're going to the national championship game. And it was kind of the time where the defensive line should be able to let loose, and we've seen them make plays every single time down the stretches of games when they're able to just pin their ears back and come after the quarterback. And just Clemson just was able to get the ball to their playmakers, and for the first time in a while, Ohio State was not able to make the tackles that we had seen them be able to make, so they could just eliminate the bigger plays. And Clemson really just shredded through the Ohio State defense, get down there and score, which then ended up not being the worst thing, because then it looked like Ohio State's offense was able to use the extra time that would not have been there if the defense had given a little bit more resistance. And then, like Braden said, it just was a miscommunication between Fields and Olave, which had not happened all year, and that connection has been working perfectly. But, I mean, that's just what happens in a competitive game like this. When it's tight, the difference is razor thin, and Ohio State just wasn't able to make that extra play to win this game.
Yeah, as they were going down the field, it had the feeling of the end of that Maryland game. I mean, even though Maryland, in the overtime game, they weren't able to get the conversion at that point, but you just had this feeling that Ohio State was going to be able to put it all together. I look down and I see Olave on the field, and I assume, oh, well, he's been tackled, where's the flag? And then only come to realize, no, he lost his footing. There was the miscommunication. There were probably some other open guys on the field at that point, as Ohio State certainly had them reeling, but it's just how the game goes.
And one thing to add with the Olave thing, while he may not have been a casualty of this, one thing we definitely noticed throughout the game was that turf was slick as snot. Players were slipping everywhere on both sides of the ball. So I mean, I think Keaton had made the point that Ohio State was missing a lot of tackles that they had made this season. But I do think the turf, it's been raining in Phoenix for the past 3 days. The locals tell us that it only rains here 14 days out of the year, and lo and behold, we're here for 5 of them for the Fiesta Bowl. And the turf's been sitting out there and kind of collecting rain over the last few days. So yeah, I mean, it really seemed like that slippery turf really had an impact today.
Yeah, and on that Olave play, after the game in the locker room, he was talking about it. His idea when he was cutting it to the outside is he thought it was a scramble drill, and that he was running the second part of his route kind of to run with Fields to get open. But Fields hadn't left the pocket, so it was just kind of a miscommunication, and he was supposed to be running a post back to the inside, so that's why Fields threw it there. But, I mean, you got to have Olave, and you have these young players on this offense, so Ohio State will be fine going forward, and you have a leader in Olave. I mean, after a play like that, you could have been kind of shut down, just not want to talk to anybody, but he kind of was a leader of this team, and he talked to the reporters. He took responsibility for this play, and I think Ohio State, you can tell that they are up there. They're able to compete with these national championship teams, and 3 years ago you couldn't say that. Ohio State wasn't at the level of Clemson, but Ohio State was there. You could argue that they played better, they made a couple of costly mistakes that if they just correct one or two of those, then they're going to New Orleans, but they're right there on the doorstep ready to kind of take the next step. And I think Ryan Day in his first year did a really good job and just came up a little bit short.
So, I mean, what are you going to walk away from this game? I mean, there's so much that we could talk about, and I'm sure we'll probably reconvene once we're back in Columbus and go over this game much more at length. But what are you going to walk away from this game? What is going to be the most indelible image in your mind?
I mean, I think, when I think, years from now when I think back to the game, I'm really going to think of that, the interceptions that not only the ones that Clemson picked off, but the ones that were near picks. And, we'd seen a lot of that from Justin Fields this season, a lot of throws that probably should have been picked off that weren't, which, he had that incredible 40-1 touchdown to interception ratio coming into this game. But it kind of speaks to that bigger thing about how, this season has been, they've had their struggles against Michigan and Wisconsin and even against Miami of Ohio. But it has been largely picture perfect season for them. But, all of those issues that kind of reared their heads a little bit in some of those games, everything just kind of came to pass this game. So I don't think that this is a long-term indictment of the team at all. I think you're looking at a group of players, obviously some will be moving on to the NFL or graduating after this year, but I think you'll be looking at a large contingent of players that will be hungry coming into next year based on, they have experienced a lot of success this season, 13-0 coming into this game. So they're just going to be hungry for more going into next year.
Yeah, my final takeaway that I'm going to always think about with this game is just the final drive Ohio State had. I mean, if you had told Ryan Day that you would have Clemson you would be down 6 points with the ball in your hands with a minute, I think 49 was on the clock, I think he would have taken that. And they really had a great game plan to get down the field. I mean, everything seemed to be working for the offense getting down the field, and then that 2nd and 7. And it just felt like the way that this team, how well they played, and we were talking about them maybe one of the best teams of all time, the way they've just dominated teams, and the way that they have survived that 3-game stretch with Penn State and then Michigan and then Wisconsin. It just felt like this was the moment where they were going to win it down the stretch. This was going to be the classic game that you'd look back to on their run to maybe a championship as the game that you'd be like, I can't believe Ohio State was able to come back and fight through all this adversity, and it just went the wrong way. And it just felt like this script ended the wrong way and that something went wrong, and it's just one of those games that's going to stick with you because you just remember the bad ones usually more than the good ones.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what comes out of this. Ohio State's certainly going to have some big things to be doing here soon, replacing Mike Yurcich, potentially. They're going to be replacing Jeff Hafley. That's what I meant to say there. Mike Yurcich rumored to be going to Texas, so Ryan Day could be facing his first 2 major hires once having a sitting staff in place. So I'll be curious to see how all that goes. My image there, so many missed opportunities. We're going to debate, was it a case of them, not being able to get it done in the red zone early? Was it a case of the officials maybe just not having things going Ohio State's way? Was it a case of, the block punt? Was it the case of, the overturned fumble recovery? I don't know which thing is going to be the thing that's going to resonate most. But when you put all of those things together and you play a team as strong as Clemson, you're often not going to come out on the right end. But, that's for another time, another place. I want to thank Braden and Keaton here as we pull the midnight shift here at State Farm Stadium here in Lindale, Arizona. Once again, the Buckeyes season comes to an end on a 29-23 loss to Clemson. We will get back at it with, some basketball analysis as time goes on. But, thanks as always for listening to the BIA podcast, and we will talk to you soon.
Be sure to stay up to date with Buckeye Grove Instant Access when the news breaks or after the big game, exclusively at BuckeyeGrove.com or anytime on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher as part of the Unscripted Ohio Podcasts Network. Hit that subscribe button so you can stay in the know and never miss a single episode.